I want you to imagine a very specific and honestly probably a super familiar scenario. You're standing just outside the heavy double doors of a loud, crowded hotel
Oh,
ballroom.
yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And you're holding like a lukewarm cup of coffee in one hand, staring at the brass handle of the door. And you are just feeling the sheer heavy dread in your stomach at the thought of having to walk in there and, quote unquote, network.
It is a totally universally understood feeling. I mean, the noise, that low roar
Yeah.
of hundreds of overlapping conversations, it's just leaking out into the hallway.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It really is. You can practically feel the social energy being drained from your body before your hand even touches the door.
Exactly. And for you listening, someone who is, always eager to learn, always looking for new ideas, but fiercely protective of your time and your mental bandwidth, this whole scenario can feel way more like a grueling chore than an actual opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. But today, we are completely changing that narrative. For this deep dive, we've pulled together a really fascinating stack of sources to figure out how to navigate these rooms effectively.
Yeah, we've got a great mix today. We're looking at behavioral psychology articles, some strategic business networking guides, a really deep dive book on the mechanics of small talk, and even some survival guides written specifically for introverts.
It's definitely an eclectic mix of literature, but what's remarkable is how they all sort of converge on one central idea,
Which is what?
that networking doesn't have to be this unstructured, chaotic free-for-all that leaves you totally exhausted.
Yeah.
It's a completely hackable system.
I love that. So our mission today is to decode the hidden mechanics of that system. We are going to build you a tactical psychological playbook.
A step-by-step guide, really.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about everything from how to read the physical geometry of a room like an undercover behavioral scientist to gracefully exiting a conversation without causing offense, all the way to capitalizing on the incredibly crucial 60-minute post-event window. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the moments before you even touch that ballroom door handle, the pregame.
Yeah, so the pregame is vital because it's entirely about auditing your internal state.
Making sure you're actually ready to go in.
Right. If you're standing outside that door feeling that heavy dread,
Yeah.
you're likely someone who treats social time as a budget. And, large, loud events are incredibly expensive for your nervous system.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. In our psychology sources, this profile is referred to as the quiet lone wolf.
The quiet lone wolf. Let's define that because it doesn't mean you're antisocial or lack interpersonal skills, right?
Not at all, not even a little bit. It simply means that your brain processes stimuli in a very specific way.
Science.
You require alone time to lower your cognitive load.
Okay, so it's a biological thing.
Totally. When you're in a crowded room, your brain is just working overtime. It's tracking dozens of faces, trying to filter out overlapping conversations.
But it's just exhausting.
Right, and processing loud music, adjusting to bright lights.
Hmm.
If you overdraw that social budget by staying too long or pushing too hard, you experience a physiological response known as a social hangover.
Oh, man. I've definitely felt that. It's not just feeling a little tired. It feels like an actual brain fog, like a literal hangover.
Because it is a real neurological event. Your nervous system essentially says, I have taken in too much sensory data, my cortisol levels are spiking, and I am shutting down non-essential functions to protect myself.
Wow. So your brain just hits the brakes.
Exactly. You become irritable, your focus shatters, and you feel completely wiped out. So the strategy for the quiet lone wolf isn't to force yourself to become like a loud, extroverted social butterfly.
Because that's just going to drain the battery faster.
Right, that's a losing game. The strategy is to play to your hidden advantages.
And one of the strategies mentioned in the sources completely surprised me. They suggest that attending an event entirely solo is actually a massive advantage.
It really is.
Which is wild because my instinct is always to use a coworker as a human shield. Like, you go together, you stand by the bar together, you talk to each other the whole night, and you just survive.
But if you do that, you leave having met absolutely no one, which defeats the entire purpose of even being there.
Fair point, yeah.
Attending solo removes that psychological crutch. It forces you to mingle. But the secret is that you can set a highly achievable, rigid baseline for yourself.
Like a quota.
Exactly. You walk in with a minimum goal of 3 new people. That's it.
Just 3. That feels doable.
It's very doable. Once you make 3 meaningful connections, you've succeeded, and you give yourself full permission to leave before that social hangover even begins to set in.
Setting a defined finish line makes a lot of sense. The sources also talk about how introverts can sort of structure opportunities to control their environment.
Yeah, structure is key here.
Things like putting your ideas in writing, publishing articles or memos so that your work does the networking for you before you even arrive.
That's a great passive strategy.
But there was one structural tip in here that I have to push back on. The networking guide suggests that if you're an introvert, you should volunteer to work the registration desk at these events. Wait, so signing up to work the registration desk sounds like more work, but is it actually a brilliant hack?
It is arguably the smartest tactical move an introvert can make at a large gathering.
But you're interacting with literally everyone who walks through the door. Doesn't that drain the battery way faster?
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of cognitive load. When you have a structured role, whether you're working the registration desk or even giving a formal presentation to 100 people from a stage, you drastically lower the unpredictable variables in the room.
Oh, I see. Because you know exactly what's going to happen.
Precisely. You don't have to navigate the chaos of cocktail chatter.
Yeah.
You are safely stationed behind a physical table.
You have a literal barrier.
A barrier and a built-in script. You just say, "Hi, what's your last name? Here's your badge." You know exactly what is expected of you, and you dictate the terms of the interaction. Structure creates safety.
That makes a ton of sense. It's like being the bartender at a house party. You have a defined reason to talk to everyone, but the interaction is bound by a specific task.
That's exactly it. It allows you to participate in a high-stress social environment without the unpredictability that actually causes the drain.
All right, so we've protected our energy by grabbing a structured role at the registration desk, but eventually your shift ends and you have to actually walk into the ballroom and mingle.
The dreaded mingling phase.
The room is crowded, people are already clustered together. How do you decide who to approach without feeling like you're completely interrupting a private moment?
Well, you have to look at the physical geometry of the room to avoid becoming what sociologists call a networking burglar.
A networking burglar.
Yes. This is the person who completely ignores body language and spatial dynamics. They force their way into a closed, uninvited group, interrupt the flow of conversation.
Oh, that's the worst.
It is. And they instantly ruin their first impression because they've violated these sort of unspoken social rules. Human beings unconsciously arrange themselves into distinct geometric shapes when they talk.
And those shapes tell you if it's okay to walk up to them.
Exactly. They broadcast their receptivity to strangers.
The sources break this down into open versus closed groups. If I see two people standing toe-to-toe, directly facing each other with squared shoulders, or three people standing in a really tight closed triangle, that is a closed group.
Yeah, they are physically blocking access.
Right, closed stance signals intimacy and focus. They do not want you there, but an open group stands differently.
Right, they stand shoulder to shoulder or in a wide U shape.
They leave a physical, literal gap in their geometry, almost as if they're missing a piece of the puzzle to close the shape. And that gap is your invitation.
It's basically an open door.
It's like trying to merge onto a busy highway. You can't just smash your car into a tight lane of traffic. You have to look for the open gap where someone is naturally letting you in. So what does this all mean for reading the room?
What's fascinating here is how humans unconsciously protect their social circles through spatial geometry. And as you are scanning for those gaps, you should also be reading the micro-expressions of the room.
Right. The sources differentiate between two types of nonverbal cues, adapters and illustrators.
Yes, adapters are nervous, self-soothing habits. Scratching the back of the neck, constantly adjusting glasses, picking at a fingernail.
Things people do when they're stressed.
Exactly. These show discomfort. If you see a group displaying adapters, the interaction is likely strained or awkward already.
So even if they're standing in an open U shape, if they're fidgeting and looking around, I probably shouldn't jump in. But what if they're using illustrators?
Well, illustrators are expansive movements.
Yeah.
People talking with their hands, nodding emphatically, and especially mirroring.
Mirroring is when they copy each other.
Right, where they're unconsciously copying each other's posture.
Mm-hmm.
If someone leans on the high top table and the other person immediately leans in too, they are in deep rapport.
So back away slowly.
You do not want to burglarize that group, regardless of how they are standing. The human need to protect intimate space is incredibly powerful.
The research on spatial invasion here is just fascinating. The sources brought up a great example about the London Underground.
Oh, that's a perfect illustration.
During rush hour, those train cars are packed. Strangers are pressed intimately against one another shoulder to shoulder. And yet it's dead silent. No one speaks. Everyone just stares intensely at the floor or at their phone.
Because acknowledging a stranger in your highly intimate physical space triggers severe psychological discomfort.
It's just too weird.
Right. Ignoring them is a defense mechanism to avoid the awkwardness of unearned intimacy. When you barge into a closed geometric group at a networking event, you are violating that exact same defense mechanism.
Oh, wow. So they react like you're a threat.
Yes. It feels jarring to them, and it triggers a defensive, exclusionary response.
Which means the absolute smartest first move you can make when you walk into a room isn't to look for the biggest, most powerful group of executives.
No, definitely not.
It's to look for the lone soul standing by the buffet, staring at their phone, pretending to read a very important email.
Exactly. They are experiencing the exact same dread you are feeling outside the door.
They want to be saved.
By approaching them, you aren't interrupting, you are rescuing them. They are the easiest, most appreciative target in the room.
Okay, so we've spotted our open U-shape, or our lone attendee by the buffet. We step into the gap. Now, how do we spark a meaningful conversation that skips the agonizing small talk?
Nobody likes small talk.
Right, talking about the weather or the traffic on the way to the hotel is just painful.
So you rely on the 7 seconds to save concept.
7 seconds, that's fast.
You have approximately 7 seconds to establish common ground and prove you are not a threat to their social comfort. The most effective way to do this is with event-specific icebreakers.
Just noticing what's around you.
Exactly. You're both in the exact same physical location, experiencing the exact same stimuli. Comment on the architecture of the venue, ask what they thought of the keynote speaker's opening slide, or even remark on the catering.
It grounds the interaction immediately in a shared reality.
It does, and it feels much more natural.
From there, networking experts always seem to push this acronym to keep the conversation going. The FORD technique. FORD stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams.
Yes, that's a very classic framework.
The idea is that these are universally relatable topics. But if you use something like the FORD technique too rigidly, doesn't it run the risk of sounding like a job interview or an interrogation? How do we keep it natural?
Oh, that is the precise danger of relying on rigid scripts. You don't want to sound like a robot.
Right. Hello, how is your family? What is your occupation?
Exactly. The FORD technique is meant to be a compass, not a script. The goal isn't to just fire off questions, it's to find avenues for genuine curiosity. And this is actually where the quiet lone wolf really excels.
How so?
Introverts typically despise superficial small talk, but they thrive on depth.
The sources refer to it as a preference for depth over small talk.
Yes. A quiet lone wolf wouldn't ask a generic question like, so what do you do? They'll ask a specific, open-ended question.
Like, what part of your day feels best lately? Or, what's the most interesting problem you're trying to solve right now?
Exactly. It completely bypasses the superficial layer.
It gets right to the good stuff.
And to make that transition feel natural and keep them engaged, you employ active listening and search for what psychologists call the golden thread.
The golden thread. How exactly does that work in practice?
It is essentially a technique of verbal mirroring. When the other person is speaking, you listen for the emotionally resonant words, that's the thread, and you gently repeat their last few words back to them with an upward inflection, like a question.
Just repeating what they said.
Yes, it prompts them to keep talking without you having to generate a brilliant new interview question.
Let's test this. Say I am the person you just approached, and I tell you, man, it's been a really stressful quarter because our main supplier suddenly went bankrupt.
Went bankrupt.
Yeah, completely out of nowhere. It means we have to resource all our raw materials before Q3.
Before Q3.
Exactly, which means my entire team is working weekends. Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, really? I see what you mean. I just kept elaborating and filling the space.
It is remarkably effective.
That is almost scary how well that works.
It proves you are listening, it validates their experience, and it subtly invites them to expand. It makes the other person feel incredibly seen and valued, all while keeping your cognitive load exceptionally low.
You literally only had to say 4 words. Okay, so you've pulled the golden thread, the conversation is flowing, but there comes a point where you need to move on.
Yes, you can't stay forever.
You promised yourself you'd meet 3 people, and you can't stay with the first person you meet all night.
No, you have to hit your quota.
So how do you land the plane? Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like landing an airplane. You don't just cut the engines and drop out of the sky. You have to announce the descent, lower the landing gear, and touch down smoothly.
That's a great way to think about it. Which is why the psychology sources use the rolling credits analogy to describe a healthy exit. Think about the end of a movie.
It doesn't just cut to black while the actors are mid-sentence.
Right. The music swells, the scene fades, the text rolls. It gives the audience a few minutes to process that the experience is naturally concluding.
Why do abrupt exits feel so terrible in a networking setting? Even if the conversation was great, if someone just says, well, nice to meet you, bye, it feels really jarring.
This raises an important question about social anxiety. If you suddenly sever the connection, the other person internalizes it.
They think it's their fault.
Exactly. Their brain immediately searches for what they did wrong. Was I boring? Did I talk too much?
Oh, that makes sense.
The rolling credits method provides psychological safety for both parties. It signals the end of the interaction without signaling a rejection of the person.
So what are the actual tactical steps to deploying the landing gear here?
You need verbal and nonverbal cues. First, summarize the value of the interaction, like, it has been genuinely fascinating hearing about your supply chain issues.
Wrapping it up in a nice bow.
Second, explicitly make a plan to connect later, which proves ongoing interest. Third, execute the physical exchange of the business card or LinkedIn scan. And finally, end with a firm handshake or warm sign-off.
Okay, the sources also provide 3 reliable categories for your actual exit line. The first is the polite excuse, which just appeals to basic human needs.
Like, I want to go grab some food, or I need to find the restroom.
Right. No one can argue with biology.
No, they cannot.
The second is the goal-oriented excuse. I promised my boss I would introduce myself to at least 5 new people tonight, so I should probably keep mingling.
That one is particularly effective because it frames your departure as a personal discipline or professional obligation.
It's not about them at all.
Exactly. It completely removes any implication that you are simply tired of speaking with them.
And the third, which seems like the most advanced maneuver, is the value-add exit. That's where you introduce them to a third person, effectively passing the conversational baton.
Oh, that is a pro move.
You bring someone else into the U-shape, introduce them, and then quietly slip away while they are shaking hands. But the most crucial rule for the quiet lone wolf in all of this: execute these rolling credits before your battery dies.
This is so important. If you wait until you are fully experiencing the social hangover, your cortisol is high and your cognitive capacity is depleted.
You're running on empty?
You will lose the ability to execute the rolling credits smoothly. You'll become abrupt, and you will damage the very connections you just spent your precious energy building.
You really have to stick to your budget.
Stick to the budget.
Okay, so you've successfully navigated the room, you read the geometry, you pulled the golden thread, you landed the plane gracefully, you walk out the heavy double doors, out of the hotel and into the cool night air.
You survived.
You did. But according to the business guides in our stack, the most critical phase of the entire night is actually just beginning. You are entering the golden hour, is sitting in your car in the hotel parking lot, furiously recording voice notes about the people you just met, a little neurotic. Or is it literally the only way to beat human memory?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at the neurology of how human memory functions under stress, it is absolutely necessary. The enemy here is a phenomenon called context decay.
Break down context decay for us. What is actually happening in the brain?
Well, remember that sensory overload we discussed. Your hippocampus has just spent 2 hours processing flashing lights, overlapping music, and dozens of new faces and names.
It's completely overwhelmed.
It is. So the moment you leave that environment, your brain is desperate to dump that short-term memory cache to save energy. Within hours, the nuanced details of a conversation just vanish.
So by the next morning, the specific individual you met blurs into just a generic job title.
And a few days later, that job title fades into a vague memory of an industry.
You look at the business card on your desk on Thursday and think, who was Sarah? Did she need our software, or did she say she hated our software? You have zero context left.
Which brings us to the critical 60-minute window. Between the time you leave the event and the time your head hits the pillow that night,
Yeah.
you must capture 4 highly specific data points about every single person you intend to follow up with.
Okay, the 4 data points from the sources are, number 1, what they actually do, beyond the vague title on their card. Number 2, the specific conversation hook, that one concrete detail, like their supply chain issue in Q3.
The golden thread detail.
Yes. Number 3, what their actual problem or need is. And number 4, what you explicitly promise to do next.
Capturing that level of specificity is the only thing that separates a genuine, valuable professional relationship from a follow-up that feels like automated spam.
Because if you wait until the next day to write your notes, Context decay will have already won.
It's too late. You will be forced to send a generic, "Hey, great to meet you" email. They will reply with a generic, "You too." And the connection instantly dies.
The execution strategy here is to draft your follow-up messages that very night in the parking lot or your hotel room while the memory is flawless. But you schedule them to send the next morning between 8 and 9 a.m.
Yes, don't send an email at 11:30 p.m.
Right. Sarah, great talking to you about the supply chain bottlenecks. Here's that article I promised you. Specificity is everything.
The sources also emphasize the importance of channel matching for these follow-ups. You must mirror the tone of the interaction.
So if it was a formal brief chat, send a professional email.
Exactly. But if it was a warm, dynamic connection, especially if you were operating in the MENA region, where this is highly prevalent, use WhatsApp to maintain that warmth.
And if you lack direct contact info, a personalized LinkedIn note is your safety net.
It's a great backup.
There is also a crucial team dynamic to consider during this golden hour. If you attended the event with colleagues, these new contacts shouldn't live siloed in your personal phone.
No, because the connection ultimately belongs to the organization. You need a centralized system to tag these contacts based on their temperature, hot, warm, or cold.
So everyone is on the same page.
Right. This provides visibility for your colleagues. There is nothing that shatters the illusion of a careful, personalized connection faster than 3 different sales reps from the same company pitching the exact same person on the exact same day.
Oh man, that makes you look completely disorganized.
It destroys all the work you just did.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We've gone on quite the journey from dreading the ballroom doors to mastering the parking lot follow-up.
It's a full system.
For you listening, the overarching takeaway is that you don't need to fake being a high-energy extrovert. You can treat your social energy as a strict budget. You can literally read the geometry of an approachable group by looking at their feet. You can spark deep conversations just by repeating a few words.
That golden thread.
You can smoothly land at the plane with a rolling credits exit. And you can lock in the real value of the night by beating context decay during that 60-minute golden hour.
Networking does not require changing your fundamental personality. Armed with these specific psychological and structural strategies, you can navigate any room efficiently, build genuine connections, and most importantly, you have full permission to leave the moment it stops serving you.
You really don't have to stay until the lights come on.
Never.
But before we wrap up, there is one final unexplored concept hinted at in our strategic networking source that I want to leave you with. It's something for you to mull over.
It's a really interesting thought.
We've heavily focused on the initial follow-up, the morning after. But what happens when that initial follow-up goes cold? People get busy, priorities shift, emails get buried. The author hints at building something called a 5-touch engine.
It's a highly provocative premise. How do you construct a systematic, automated way to reach out to a new connection 5 times over the course of several months?
Like sharing a relevant article, congratulating them on a company milestone, or offering a resource.
Right, but doing all of that without ever crossing the line from being a helpful professional to becoming an annoying pest.
That is the ultimate tightrope walk of relationship building. How do you stay on their radar when you have nothing to sell them today, but you might want to collaborate next year? It's something to think about the next time you find yourself standing outside those heavy ballroom doors, staring at the brass handle, holding that lukewarm cup of coffee. Armed with this playbook, maybe next time you won't feel that heavy dread. Maybe you'll just feel ready.